I've met many compulsive liars. I've believed some of them until their lies became a bit excessive and frequent. Most of them are just obvious. Their stories are so far-fetched that there's no way anyone could believe them. I knew a guy who said that he was related to Joey from the metal band Slipknot. He once said that he, as a baby, was in one of their photos. I did a little 5-minute research and put 2 and 2 together. He was born in 1989 and Slipknot started in 1995. I also knew someone who would dress like Captain Jack Sparrow and said that he earned his outfit from Somalia when he was a pirate. Wow, how can he expect anyone to believe him? But the one liar that changed my life was the one who lied about being a genius. I'm Elias Frazier, and this is my really messed up life story. I was raised in a home of 8, 6 kids and 2 parents. I'll introduce the less relevant as the story goes on, but the 3 most relevant I will introduce you to. My father, who hates me because my sister was born and I was no longer the youngest. My mother, who was always my protector from my father and Christy. My youngest sister. She puts the cyst in sister. She put the cis in psychosis. She was a bully. I could beat her to a bloody pulp, so it's not her size or strength that she bullies me with. She weaponizes our dad against me, knowing that next to Joseph Smith and God, she is the holiest grail in his eyes. She is the reincarnation of Joseph Smith. I could go on about how much my dad chooses her over me and pretty much all of the siblings, but mostly me. My father is very active in the Mormon church and is the bishop's right-hand man. He gets paid very well and can afford a lot of nice things working so high in the big business of Joe. I had a lot to prove to make him proud, but I gave up and just focused on me and what I'm going to do when I turn 18. Moving out goes without saying. My dream was always to either be a musician or doing something regarding film. I can play guitar, piano, and even the drums a little bit. But I'm also a natural with the camera, and I have a lot of fun making goofy skits with friends. I never had anything against religion, but I really hated Mormonism. Jesus was probably the only thing I liked about it. He was cool, told it like it was, and wasn't a complete D-bag about it. I hated going to church, and hated that I was 15 years old and still being forced to go to church and listen to a bunch of closet polygamists talk about family values and Jesus that when they idolized Joseph Smith more than they worshiped Jesus. Telling them that I didn't want to go wasn't enough. My mom was a devout Catholic, which was why she didn't let my dad treat me the way he would have loved to, which is probably to give me a good weekly Roman torture. My mom loved my dad and converted to Mormon, even though she's still Catholic deep down. Because my words didn't work for getting me out of church, I took matters into my own hands. One Sunday, the bishop was preaching and gave some of the people attending a chance to share some scripture, mostly from the Book of Mormon. I raised my hand, and because I'm my father's son, the bishop let me speak. I stood up, and I said, I know Joseph Smith was a false prophet, and I know that the Book of Mormon is as fake as Pamela Anderson's tits. I was banned from that church indefinitely. So that's my childhood in a nutshell. Back to the kid at my high school who lied about being a genius. He would talk in a very sharp American accent with a tint of British and would lie about his grades and the things he knows. He knew that not everyone would ask too many questions about these subjects that he claimed to know everything about. That was until someone decided to ask him in front of a large group of friends the questions he thought they would never ask. Long story short, he knew nothing and was failing a lot of his classes. All of the girls who fell head over heels for him wouldn't even look at him, and friends didn't want to be guilty by association. So he descended to the odd table of antisocial weirdos who talk about nothing but sex that they may never experience. I, however, was greatly inspired. If he could get away with lying about it for a semester, I could get away with telling the truth about it for life. I hit the books. My grades improved and my vocabulary advanced. I didn't add any accents, but my voice got a lot quieter. I gained the popularity that he gained, but the huge difference was I wasn't lying about it. It was all true. I couldn't believe it. I didn't have to catch my friends before they accidentally busted me out. I didn't have to explain the F on my paper when the girls would see it on my desk. I told them the truth. Sometimes I felt like I was lying because everything was happening so soon, but I wasn't. No pressure at all to cover anything up. I had some fun with this. I got into all kinds of books and subjects. The best ones that got me the most popularity were the useless subjects like music, shows, and movies. Every time there was a new musician on the rise, I immediately looked up their history and even their real names. Yes, girls were in love with me. A lot of temptation, almost every corner I turned. My charisma was through the roof. I knew that I needed to take this to the next level. I started wanting to gain more wisdom from a religious perspective. I tried Islam, but it was too angry. I know Muslims are typically nice people, but wow, the Quran has a lot of violence in it. So I tried Buddhism, and that was a lot better, because there's a lot of messages about not being so quick to act. But that reminded me of a book that I was all too familiar with. I knew that it was going to have the perfect balance of peace and wrath. A book that would empower my ability to really put people in a silent rage. The Bible. I studied it from cover to cover. I listened to Bible scholars and preachers make good points, but I mostly listened to former Mormons and anti-Mormons give their points on why Mormonism is completely wrong. I also listened to Mormons try to defend their cultic beliefs and laughed because they literally have no facts, just opinions. I was ready. At the age of 17, I returned to my father's putrid church and apologized for what I said and told them why. I told them that I was being abused by my father and that I was angry with religion. I was welcomed back. The bishop and the other powers of the church had to follow confidentiality guidelines, so they didn't tell my sorry excuse of a father. I was in, and I was not going to let up, but I wasn't going to just charge in either. I started picking intellectual fights with the church leaders, quoting Paul in Galatians about false prophets. I did this for a year behind my dad's back. When I was 18, I moved out. I was already working full-time, and as I had everything all packed and ready to go, I told my dad what I've been doing at church and to ask the bishop. I could almost see steam blowing out of every hole in his head. My mother wasn't happy with me either, but she definitely wasn't happy with him. She knew how abusive and emotionally neglectful he was with me, and she gave me a huge talk about what I did. She said that it wasn't right what I did, and perhaps she was right. But I hated my dad so much that I couldn't control myself. I planned this day for a long time and had begun the work since I was 15. I hated Mormonism, but I never hated the idea of Jesus. I always quoted him as inspiration to carry on in life. I knew there was a higher power, and I knew that the Bible was undeniable history. But I was grossed out by the whole religious side of it for obvious reasons. I was removed from that church at the perfect time because I think I was about to earn my first pair of Mormon panties. Truth is, if I need a new pair, I can just go to the store and buy some. I don't need to be a good little Mormon boy to get a free pair. I wish I could say that things got better over time, but unfortunately, things just got worse, way worse. When the big virus changed the world, I, along with many others, developed a drinking problem. I ended up in a car accident under the influence and ended up in the hospital and then straight to jail. Thankfully, it was just my first offense, and with the beer flu going around, I only spent 6 nights in jail and only owed 10 grand in fines. I didn't need to pay all at once, but I did manage to pay it all off in a short period of time. However, my sentence wasn't over. My dad and my sister made sure of that. The legal system is out of my hair and off my back, but those two would never let it go and were in and out of my apartment non-stop to make sure I didn't have any alcohol in my possession. My dad found some kombucha in my fridge and thought it was liqueur, and he opened it up and poured it down the sink. You're probably asking why I let them do this. I was in a very weak and vulnerable state and hated myself. I was this super genius who was very proud of being sober and had many plans for my future, and I blew all with a DUI. I was super angry and wanted to exercise my Second Amendment rights on them, but at the same time was thinking before acting. Every time they just waltzed in freely, like it was their house and inspected, my hatred grew deeper and darker for them. I also let them do it because I believed, as my little sister explained it, that my whole family would disown me and think that I'm a useless addict if I didn't let them play as my probation officers. My dad was the enabler, but my sister, over time, ended up becoming the brains of everything. I hadn't called any of my siblings for almost a year because I was too afraid that they would either A, talk awkwardly like they didn't want to talk to me at all, or B, tell me straightforward that they wanted nothing to do with me. After almost a year had passed, I mustered up the courage to call them, and they were very excited to hear my voice and were very confused about what Christy said about them disowning me. That confusion grew quickly into anger, and they couldn't stand her. They hated how manipulative and controlling she was, and now they want nothing to do with her. Though for the sake of family, they put up with her. Things are just awkward, and they avoid conversation with her however they can without making it too obvious. One day, I had a bunch of friends over, and we were having a great time. We had snacks and even a bottle of cheap 2% alcoholic wine. Then we started binge-watching some throwback sitcoms from our childhood. That's when my father walked in, and the party was paused. He starts looking around at the mess in the house and immediately starts in on me. "What is all of this?" Dad asks, with anger in his voice. I explain to him the party we're having. He stares at me, and his eyes widen and loudly asks, "Is this what you're doing with my money? Throwing parties and making a mess?" I replied, "Your money?" He answers, "Yes, the money I spent to raise you." I replied, "Dad, this is my money that I worked for, and I'm celebrating with my friends. And yes, we have wine here too." Dad grew angrier and shouts, "I'm closing your bank accounts. Your irresponsible spending and splurging days are over." I shout back, "If you even try to do that, I will call the cops and you will be arrested for bank fraud. I'm sure your bishop will be proud of you." Dad was frozen with bloodshot eyes and a red face. I continue, "You are never to show up here again unannounced, and you, Holy Lord and Savior, Christy, is unwelcomed to ever come back here again." Dad's eyes started to fill with tears of rage, and he walked out in utter defeat. My friends and I poured the wine and did a cheers to my monster of a father being destroyed. They knew about my life and the whole situation and were telling me to do all kinds of different things. One friend of mine, who has a super hot temper, kept telling me to shoot them and that it would be self-defense. I won't do that, though. They will become their own worst enemies. Christy is too narcissistic to realize that the family hates her, but she'll see it someday. The family and I have had many things to say about Dad. and it's quite clear that they don't like him either. He would have days where he just wanted to yell and start beating us, but make me the one who started it. I think he wanted them to hate me for getting them in trouble, but my mom would never let them believe that. My grandfather's name was Elias, so I was named after him. My grandpa was a good grandpa, but abused my dad as a kid. If you think I had it bad, my dad has me beat. No pun intended. He would always say that my grandpa was a great father to him, but had zero stories to back up those baseless compliments. Long story short, I think my dad named me after my grandpa to use me as a punching bag to take out his anger towards his father on me. He never treated any of the other kids like this, especially Christy. The party was wrapping up. Some friends stayed the night and some went home. The next morning, my dad and my sister showed up unannounced, banging at the door. I answer, and they look very determined. I ask, "Can I help you?" My dad answers, "We're going to need you to get your things and come with us." With suspicious curiosity in my face, I ask where. My dad replies, "You're going to be staying at your sister's house from now on. You're unable to take care of yourself and are unable to make good decisions." I ask, "How long am I staying with her?" He replies, "Indefinitely. It's been decided among the family that you are beyond repair and you have no control over yourself. Your house is a mess and you have friends laying around on your floor. You have alcohol in your house after you got a DUI. Christy takes over, scolding me. Your life just isn't together, Eli. You will be staying where there are some rules and regulations. We'll help you stay on track and we'll help you dress right. You can't be wearing these leather pants like you're some kind of rock star. So go change and bring just a few things. My husband is on the way with the truck." I look at them with disbelief as to how entitled they are. I say to them, "You can't be serious." Christy replies, "I'm very serious. You need help and we're going to give it to you. You can't be living like this." I stop playing games and I tell them, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here." Christy says, "Oh no, you're not. Now come on and pack your things. Joe is 10 minutes away." I ask, "What will happen if I don't?" She answers, "Your job will not tolerate this kind of living, and I will inform them about what you've been doing with your paychecks." I replied, "Go right on ahead. I tell them all the time what I do with my money. I've worked there for 10 years. She tries another scare tactic. Well, you will be disowned by the family if you don't come with us." I retort, "You already tried that. I called them, everything is fine. I'm staying right here." She started yelling and rambling, and then my dad says this as a last resort. "If you don't come with us, you will never see or hear from your kids again." I shout, "Dad, you abusive, useless idiot. I have no kids." "Did you actually just say that? Both of you leave my house right now, or I'll call the cops." As I tried to close the door, Christy put her foot in the way, so I shoved her and then slammed it and locked it. Later, the police showed up because I pushed my sister, but then I explained why, and they were very cool, and they left. Apparently, her and my dad tried using my DU I record as leverage to boost the case, but obviously it didn't work. Since then, I haven't seen them, however. My dad wouldn't stop spreading rumors. Family nonstop messaging me on social media, letting me know what he's been saying. Another year had passed, and I receive a call from my mom, letting me know that there was an urgent meeting at their house. When I arrived, everyone was there except for Christy. Dad was trying to muscle out the words but kept crying. We all knew it wasn't going to be good, and that it had to do with Christy. He eventually was able to talk. Christy is in jail right now under murder charges. He cries some more and then continues. Her children are no longer with us. They are in heaven with Joseph Smith and the Lord. My sister murdered my baby nieces and nephew. We were all crying. I was spaced out and couldn't process anything. The next thing I hear is my dad's angry voice saying, "What? What are you thinking about? You must be glad that she's no longer the pride of the family." I shake my head in great confusion as he gets up and gets in my face saying, "This is just your moment to shine, isn't it? Everything is about you. You. Can't you see what's happening? Your nieces and nephew are dead, and all you can do is think about yourself." My mother jumps up from her chair, stomps her foot, saying to my dad, "You just know how to make a bad situation worse." She marches out the back door and slams it shut. The rest of the siblings started in on him. My older sister says, "Dad, you accuse him of making it all about him, but you're the one who is making it about him." My oldest brother says, "Yeah, Dad, he was just sitting there silent, and you just picked him out of the crowd and started yelling." I then started, "You are a deadbeat. I wish you were the one that little bitch killed. I hate you. You are the reason why your grandkids are dead. You enabled that brat to the point where she thought she had the world under her control. And when she realized that she couldn't even control her own kids, she went and did this. You're a murderer. You have just as much to do with their death as she does." My voice got louder, and my eyes started tearing up, and that's when my mom came back in, and my siblings started pulling me away and hugging me. We all left, and my dad just stayed there thinking that he was in the right. No one had any appetite, and so we all went out to a park and just sat and talked. We can't believe what happened, and we're all actually surprised that my dad acted the way he did. A couple of months have passed, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that I will never see my nieces and nephew again. My dad thought I was glad. I wish this never happened. Within these months, I found the real Jesus. I accepted him as my Lord and Savior, and life was starting to get a lot better. I still have fun bullying the Mormons and watching them have meltdowns when they have no base for their arguments, but I offer the gift of eternal salvation now. My dad wasn't happy about the way the family took my side the day he announced what my sister did. He was on a warpath and did everything he could to destroy me. It was working. He spread rumors to the family about my life and told them that I'm doing drugs. I'm not doing drugs, nor am I even drinking. I'm not a recovering alcoholic either. I have wine in my fridge, and I haven't had reason to use it because there's no reason to celebrate. My sister's kids are dead. She's in prison. My dad is making my life a living hell, all the while he's living life. He's greatly loved by his church and the family. He's well known around the area because he started a program for troubled kids from ages 10 to 17 to help them with their past. It was a great program, and it helped a lot of kids, but he's a hypocrite because he was just as abusive as the parents of the kids that he helps. My life was a living hell. I keep wanting to see my nieces and nephew, but I can't. I miss their underdeveloped ability to say my name when they would see me. My nephew called me Az, my oldest niece called me Ellis, and the youngest would call me S. I know I will never hear that again. My father told the family things that would push them to call me and message me with how disappointed they are with me, and I was at my breaking point. I was looking at some objects in my house, contemplating being roommates with my sister and my dad. Well, you get the picture. But saner heads prevailed. I knew one thing for sure, and that was that something had to happen to Dad to stop him. A light bulb turned on in my head, and I was a little crazy for trying this. But there were some things about my dad that I noticed, and I felt like this would work. I hopped onto the social media and created a fake profile and added my dad. I didn't think it was going to be so easy, but I hit the jackpot. 2 weeks after I created this profile, I showed up at my dad's house, putting on a miserable facade. Like I just did something terrible, and I really needed to talk to my dad. I started my saying, "Dad, I did something terrible." He looks at me, asking what I did. I answered, "I started talking to this underage girl online, and it got really inappropriate. I think I'm going to jail." He starts screaming and hollering and calling me a disgrace to the family, and started to pick up his phone to spread the best news he had ever heard about his son being a total creep. But then I stopped him and asked him if he would like for me to read the conversation between me and the girl, and he stares at me, looking cocky, and agrees to listen to the chat. I said, "All right, Father. Please don't be mad." I started reading the very disturbing sexual details between the team. I even read the girl's name, and my dad's face turned pale. He knew there and then that this wasn't a chat between me and the girl, but a chat between him and I. I looked at him and said, "So Dad, you're not mad at me, are you?" He just sat there in silence. I continued to talk. "Dad, you made my life a living hell. You really messed with my head. I tried to forgive you in the best way that I could. But the only way I can really forgive you is if I put you in a position where you can't hurt me anymore." I grab a chair and I sit down in front of him, staring at the horror in his face with nothing but malice in mine. I scared myself a little. "I keep talking. I don't want an apology from you anymore. I know you won't mean it. I want to stop you, and I cannot believe that I can now. I'm not here to negotiate with you. I'm here to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to prison. You won't be in there forever, but you will be in there for at least 2 years. Then you will be released, and you will never be taken seriously ever again. You will be banned from your church, and your kids' program will be handed over to someone else. You did this. The family kept telling you to stop, and you didn't. Mom said that she was going to leave you if you didn't leave me alone, and she left you. Now, given that you are a creepy pervert, she will get everything. You are defeated, Dad. You had 31 years to treat me like a son, and you didn't. Good luck. You're a disgrace to the family." I get up from the chair and open the door for the police to come in and arrest my dad. Unlike most traumatic stories, I didn't stand there crying. I was smiling. I was very happy to see my father finally be stopped and overpowered. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and the family, aunts, uncles, and cousins were blowing my phone up with apologies and assumed that the abuse I was trying to tell them about regarding my dad was sexual. I explained to them that it wasn't sexual and that he never came close to anything like that. However, he likely would have done it to one or even some of the kids in his program. This precious church was very disappointed in him. The bishop was devastated and was in disbelief. The only people who I felt bad for were the kids in his abuse program and my mother. She cannot believe that this is the man she married. More so, she can't believe that this is not the man she married. My brothers and sisters are not happy about what he did, but they're not entirely mad at me for baiting him. They feel terrible that he had pushed me to this level of desperation that I would pull a string like this. They also felt bad for punishing me, for always getting them into trouble unintentionally. For example, when I was 7, I asked my second oldest brother to make me a PB&J. He didn't use the twist tie, and instead just twisted the top of the bread bag and put it in the cabinet. Later, my dad came home and went into the cabinet and saw the bread bag and started shouting. My brother ran in there and apologized. and my dad started going off on the whole family. When he found out who the sandwich was being made for, he charged right at me and started beating me. He blamed me and made me apologize to all of my siblings for making him yell at them. They hated my guts for weeks. This was my childhood. This is what my dad had done to me, my entire life, and now he gets to finally sit and think about what he's done. 4 years have passed and he's out of prison, and within those 4 years, I got married to a beautiful woman who treats me like a king. My life and my family's lives became a lot better. Nobody had my dad to worry about and answer to for anything. He hasn't changed, however. He can't go back to that church nor any normal church. He has to go to a church specifically for registered sex offenders. My wife has been very understanding of everything that I've been through. I have no anger issues because I've had much fulfillment as far as revenge. What I did to my dad wasn't an act of revenge, but the price he paid was very fortunate for me. Christy will spend the rest of her life in prison for what she did to her kids. I will not miss her, and I will not visit her. I have a little family of my own, and I plan to treat her like the rare treasure she is. This is my happily ever after. God is good always. He will avenge his children, and all we have to do is sit back. The end.